Good day, everyone. So, this chapter discusses the connection business model, in which we can point out that it addresses the access to the internet or other networks and the provision of network platforms. So, without further ado, let's proceed to the next slide. So, this chapter is divided into three sections. 7.1 presents general information about the connection business model. 7.2 deals with the different types of connection business model. And 7.3 describes the underlying value chain based on different core assets and competencies. So, as aforementioned, the connection business model addresses the access to the internet or other networks and the provision of network platforms. The services provided by the connection business model enables the interaction between actors in digital networks, which cannot be possible in the physical world due to high transactions and communication barriers. So this section indicated two subcategories of the connection business model, namely the intraconnection and the interconnection, or also known as community. So the intraconnection community subcategory of the connection business model describes the offer of commercial or communication services within the internet. And this includes, for example, community providers, including social networks, user messages, user exchanges, as well as customer opinion portals. So all these offer a platform to the users in order to establish contact with peers or friends and to share information, knowledge, opinions, or data files. So next, social media platforms are on trend nowadays since Web 2.0 applications are trending as well. So these providers became a part of the people's day-to-day routine, such as sending emails and greeting cards. And we can also relate this to our situation now, wherein emailing became the standard form of communication due to government protocols and the pandemic, of course. On the other hand, providers in the interconnection subcategory do not offer communication opportunities within the internet but supply access to the physical networks. One example is the internet service providers, which provides technological access to the internet for customers. In our setting, these ISPs are specifically known, um, well, um, they're Globe, PLDT, Sky Broadband, Converge, and etc. So, as mentioned in the previous slides, the interconnection business model provide commercial and or communicative services within the internet. So within this business model type, a distinction can be drawn between the community area and the technical internet services. In this context, the community can be further differentiated into sub-business models, such as social networks and social messages. So social networks are one of the leading trends in the context of social media and Web 2.0 applications. So some of the most common social networks pointed out in this chapter are Facebook and Baidu. And on the other hand, LinkedIn has been given special attention in this chapter since LinkedIn is a network for professional profiles in a more professional environment. So in UANP, LinkedIn is used from the start of the university life up until the end because it has been pointed out by professors that our CVs have to be updated all throughout our life in the university. So in the context of social messaging providers, the example given in this chapter is Skype and WhatsApp. So both services offer this offer the user a secure, private connection with friends and acquaintances in order to communicate via text messages and internet telephony, as well as to exchange data. So the business model variant interconnection is divided into two types: the fixed and mobile connection. So, however, a clear differentiation is not always possible, especially with regard to large telecommunication providers. So, in this chapter, O2 and Vodafone, for instance, was the example given. So, they offer fixed connection as well as mobile connection services. So, overall, there is a trend towards um, product bundling for interconnection providers, and the connection to the internet is implemented in several ways. So, while traditional telecommunication companies are increasingly building on technical networks such as ISDN and DSL, smaller providers and especially Virgin Media use the cable networks to offer a telephone and internet service. So when using this connection technology, the companies can then be unambiguously assigned to the fixed connection type. So within the framework, to the pure M connection providers, um, a considerable variety is to be found, although the actual service offered of the mobile connection companies, that is the connection of the customer with the mobile internet, is identical. So, however, it is generally possible to distinguish between a few mobile telephone provider with their own networks, such as Vodafone or O2, and the pure service providers that use these networks for their service. So, in addition to the relevant aspects of the value added chain, the connection value chain is also implicitly addressed to to the respective partial models of business model in order to obtain a comprehensive understanding of the characteristic core activities. So, what you can see here is a value chain of a prototype connection provider. So at the beginning of the value added chain are the planning and construction of the server resources necessary for the operation. And in addition to the selection of the appropriate hardware and software, the network infrastructure is another essential determinant for value creation. So in order to be able to provide the customer with reliable access to the internet or the um, for point one, this is to be able to provide the customer with reliable access to the internet or the corresponding applications and platforms. Particularly for the um, business model type interaction, the expansion and maintenance of the network infrastructure is of great importance in order not to incur strategic um, disadvantages by using an outdated technology in competition with their providers. So if a provider cannot keep its pace with competitors in a technological aspect or contest, rather, it can give the customer only maximum achievable bandwidth, which is a lot slower of the compared to the older technology, and thus offer a lower benefit. The construction and expansion or maintenance of a network infrastructure is very costly, and it can therefore be useful to work together with infrastructure partners. So it can therefore be useful to work together with infrastructure partners. For example, the two mobile providers, O2 and Vodafone, entered into a strategic partnership in developing of the UMTS network in order to realize synergy effects. So this costs were cut off around 3 billion euros within the scope of this alliance and the synergy, rather. So, however, cooperation with the other companies cannot only be useful, but in the case of internet service providers, it also can be imperative in some areas. Um, this is mainly due to the construction of the internet, which is a worldwide network consisting of many individual computer networks. That's why the internet service providers offer the end customer an access point to this global network. So the user dials into the provider by means of a modem and thus establishes a connection. So this automatically connects the user to all other users who are currently connected by this provider in order to enable not only local access but also global access. Oh, sorry. Um, the network infrastructure is an important core asset, especially for the interconnection provider, since this is the only way to establish a smooth, permanent connection to the internet. And the last step of the value chain of the connection business model type focuses on customer relationship management, or also known as CRM. So the last step of the value chain of the business model type focuses on CRM and the after sales service. So through active customer care as well as a consistent focus on the customer and the systematic design of customer relationship processes, companies seek to satisfy customers and bind them to their brand and products or services. So in this context, the customer should be offered the best possible service at a very reasonable cost. So besides the important core assets, competencies are also required to maximize the potential of the core assets for the providers. So within the scope of connection providers, the technology and integration competence as well as the customer acquisition and customer loyalty competence are essential. So in the context of customer acquisition and customer loyalty competence, the focus is on the employees' abilities in the case of interconnection providers. Customer acquisition is linked with a classic sales competence that enables to acquire new customers or to use up selling potentials. So that is all. Thank you and have a great day.